Okay, let's talk about rabies. Rabies is, let me just say that rabies is 100% fatal. Rabies is nothing to mess around with. Obviously, you get rabies from the bite of an infected animal. In our environment, this could be from a infected animal such as a raccoon, skunks, foxes, coyote, and definitely squirrels. Also, horses can actually get rabies. One of the odd things is that possums cannot get rabies. They can't harbor it in their system. So that's a plus side for possums, other than the fact that they're super cute. Okay, so rabies has to be transferred to you through an infected bite. So if a dog bites you and is infected, then you have been exposed to rabies. And like I said, it's 100% fatal. So let's talk about what you can do about that. There is a rabies vaccine. I can tell you right now that people that are in any sort of shelter work, veterinarians, people that have to work wildlife, they have all had a rabies vaccine. My daughter had a vaccine at the beginning of vet school. It was a little pricey. I think I paid over $500 for that one vaccine, but as it turned out, it was quite worth it. So, what happens with this is you start getting flu like symptoms and then you start getting real anxious. And so, you probably have visions of a rabid dog where they're foaming at the mouth and, they're really angry and they try to bite and that kind of thing. And that's because they get very agitated. It attacks the brain. This is a neurological virus, and that it also causes what's called hydrophobia. Hydrophobia means fear of water. However, what's happening is it attacks the salivary glands and it starts overproducing saliva. And so it looks like they're foaming at the mouth when actually it's not, it's saliva. It's not, whatever you think foam is. So if you are bitten and you are bitten by some random dog out there and you don't have the dog and you don't know whether the dog has had his shots, then the dog is usually quarantined for a period of 14 days because it's going to take about 14 days for these symptoms to start showing up. If the dog starts having symptoms, then you have to have these shots. And the last time I looked it up, there were quite a few of them. I think you have to have them in your abdomen. There's like 13 shots that you have in your abdomen um, to keep from getting rabies. If you don't have the dog and you don't know whether the dog has had its shots and it just runs off somewhere, then you may have to defer to your healthcare provider as to whether prophylactically they will give you those shots or not. But this is a neurological problem virus, so it attacks the nerve cells in the brain, and the receptors are very specific for brain cells. And anything neurological, you'll have seizures, but at first you have more confusion. You think you're paranoid. You think people are after you. You're confused. You're very agitated, very angry, and you don't want anybody near you. And then starts having hallucinations, and you start foaming at the mouth or, showing symptoms of hydrophobia. With this one, a definitive diagnosis has to come from removing the head of the animal and sending it to a laboratory. Several years ago, I had a student whose Great Dane was suspected of having rabies, and they actually had to cut the head off of the Great Dane and send it to a lab. Now, your veterinarian is not going to go near it because it's way, way, way too contagious. So they actually had to send it off to a lab. I believe they sent it off to Cornell lab to check, and I don't remember whether the dog actually had it or not. At one period when Lacey was in vet school, a horse that she had actually been working on was suspected of having rabies, and she had had the vaccine, but they actually put her on rabies watch and quarantined the barn. This was a huge deal because at the time there was a Clydesdale horse in the barn that had been at Dolly World and got sick, and they transferred it to UT Vet School for some treatment. But as it turned out, the horse did not have rabies, and the Clydesdale, of course, was fine, although Budweiser was very, very upset about it. So, one of the things that you have to do to get a definitive diagnosis is remove the head, remove the brain, and look at it from there. And that's going to take a special laboratory to do it. It is not going to be your veterinarian sticking his neck out there. So, leave the wildlife alone. A lot of squirrels around here have rabies as well as raccoons, and I know they're very cute and I know they're very sweet, but just to be 100% safe, make sure your animals have their rabies shots and that you don't mess with the wildlife. All right, let's move on to norovirus. This is the one that St. Francis had, and I don't know if you remember this or not. Maybe some of your older siblings did, but you get this from contaminated food or water, and where they picked it up was getting it from the water fountain. So the kids, water fountains are pretty nasty, guys, and I would not drink from a water fountain. But if you do drink from a water fountain, let the water run for a little bit before you drink, because anything that's collected in the nozzle will come out and drain before you drink it. But you're going to have intestinal problems. There's going to be a lot of diarrhea. You're going to be vomiting. You get a lot of cramping with this. This is one of those, I'm sorry, that's self-limiting. There's no treatment for it. And again, self-limiting means it's going to be problematic for you, but you're going to get over it without having to go to the doctor. The only reason you would have to go to the doctor is if you got dehydrated. And anytime you do that, anytime you're sick or you've picked up a bug or something, guys, eat popsicles, the like the cherry and the grape kind, because there's enough sugar in there, glucose, to satisfy your brain, but there's really not enough substance in there to have you throw up. So the kids that got the norovirus, they just had to treat the symptoms. The virus ran its course. It was in the lytic cycle. This is one of those that is going to make you sick right away. You're going to know it probably within 2 to 4 hours, and you're going to have the diarrhea and the vomiting and a lot of cramping. So make sure that you watch yourself when you're drinking out of any fountain, but also you can pick this up from drinking after somebody, but it's more common to get it from a water fountain or another food source. Okay, we'll take the next two tomorrow or later.